Hi, this is Gavin from FE News. I'm here at the AOC 2019 Annual Conference. I think this must be my 15th Association of Colleges Annual Conference. So join me as I chat with the main speakers from the stage, some interesting people from the breakouts and some interesting people in the audience around the latest news and views from AOC 2019. So this is Gavin from FE News. I'm here at the AOC Annual Conference 2019. I'm here with Lewis and we're going to be chatting about where the Independent Commission for the College of the Future is right now and where it could be going. So Lewis, can you introduce who you are and your role in the Independent Commission?
Yeah, brilliant. I'm Lewis Kubis. I'm Director of the Independent Commission on the College of the Future, so working with a fantastic group of commissioners led by Ian Diamond and working with a great team providing the support to drive forward the work of the Independent Commission, and crucially, and that's why it's so exciting being at AOC conference over the next couple of days, thinking about how we can involve as many people as possible in the work of the Commission, in thinking about where we are, where we want to go to, and how we get there together.
We just had the report recently saying like the initial findings and where the commissioners are wanting to go to. So can you explain a bit more where we're at right now? But I'm really excited about where we could be going next. And there's a whole range of ideas, really. This is the exciting part, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, I absolutely share your excitement. So the Commission was launched last spring, and since then we've been doing a huge amount of work, really talking to as many different people as possible about where they think we are as a sector across the four nations. And obviously there's very different contexts and very different kind of issues to grapple with across the four nations. But we've been talking about as many people as possible about where we are and crucially what role they think colleges can play for people, communities and for governments across the four nations. So that's involved over 25, 30 round tables. We've been talking to principals, chairs, governors, clerks, to trade unions, different staff at all levels of colleges and to students, but also talking to a whole range of other voices. So we've been talking with different employer groups, we've been talking with universities, we've been talking with schools, and that's been hugely helpful and informative. And so what the progress report that we've published last week is about is an attempt to kind of thematise what do we think the key issues are that people have been talking about and the trajectory for colleges. And we're keen to put that out there to be really open and reflective, to test whether that's what people think, to give people who we haven't managed to speak with an opportunity to feed in, and crucially then, like you say, to start to think about the exciting next stage of so what? So what do we do with this? We can agree that we need a system where we develop a real sense of an education ecosystem. So what does that mean? We can talk about the ways in which leadership is changing, will have to continue to change. So what do we do about it and how do we meet those challenges? We're talking about how we invest seriously in the workforce, including in CPD, in greater movement across and between industry. So what changes are required there? And so this is the stage really where we want people to be feeding in. What do they think and how do we take this forward together?
And the report, when it came out, I saw a real flurry of activity on social media of everyone with a lot of opinions. And what has been the feedback that you received so far? What are the things which are the real top notes that people are like, we want this or we want to see this type of thing?
So I think it's really it's been really interesting to see the feedback over the last couple of days, and fantastic as always having FE News' support in facilitating this really important conversation. I think there's a sense of what are we? I think there's a major driver on how do we together take this forward now. So if you've been around the sector for a long time, lots of these issues we've been talking about for ages, and so I think you might look at the paper and think, well, what are we going to do about it? And like you say, that's the really exciting stage we're at now. So what does this mean and how can we really tangibly take these things forward? Ian Diamond, as Commission Chair, has been really clear right throughout that he wants specific recommendations for each of the four nations. So you're absolutely not setting a kind of symmetrical set of recommendations, particular recommendation for each of the four nations, which we can actually go ahead and implement. So what are those ideas? And that's been really exciting, starting to get a sense of both what those ideas might be and how we can work together to bring as many people together to drive those forwards.
So, you know, there's going to be a lot of people with different viewpoints and different agendas. So it's going to be difficult to be able to sort of cut through the noise on this, I bet. But for you, so far, we're at the interim sort of stage here, really. What have been, like, say, the top three, which seems to keep coming up with all the different round tables and feedback you've got from different people? Are there three main sort of themes that you're hearing at the moment?
So, like I say, a lot of themes coming through, but I think some things particularly spring to mind. We've been talking a huge amount about how we think about the relationship that colleges already have, but how we deepen it with employers. So you have fantastic examples right across the Four Nations of amazing partnerships, and it's been incredible seeing in a whole number of colleges across the country the work that's already taking place. But I think there's a sense that we can do much more there. We can do much more to support particularly the role that colleges play in close-to-market innovation, and I think government understanding, the understanding of governments across the Four Nations and support for that, I think there's more we can do to develop that. So we're looking really crucially at how we deepen those relationships. Do we need to think about how we bring those conversations together, what the brokerage mechanism is, particularly for SMEs and micro businesses, and how we deepen that partnership? And how do we think about how we open up colleges, in the words of one business leader, to better sweat the assets of colleges, to think about how employers then are using colleges to develop prototypes for hot desking, for in-work training, and so you really have that constant fluid movement of employers in and out, deeply embedded in our colleges. Like I say, that happens all over the place, but what more can we do, and how can we deepen that piece? That relates then to a second issue around how we can deepen cross-government, departmental support for the work that colleges do. So in a UK government context, how much do BEIS understand and think about strategically the work that colleges do? How much the DWP do so? How much the Department of Health? How much the DCLG do so? And so how can we at least point to the points of better links that we can be achieving through integrated cross-departmental working? And that is a challenge right across the Four Nations, particularly stark in UK government, and part of the issue there is scale. But that's a massive priority. How do we think about better integrated strategies and alignment between different pieces of work? We've got a really exciting event on that coming up with the NHS Confederation, and that's going to be thinking, amongst other things, about how do we deepen that Department of Health, DFE engagement around these strategic questions. I'll give you 4 points, in fact. So there's a third point around systems, and this has been coming up the whole time, but I think it's really apparent in the progress report that we've been hearing a lot about how do we develop a sense of colleges sitting within a coherent ecosystem. So how do colleges relate to each other? How do they relate to other parts of the education system? And how do they relate within a broader regional system? So with partners like the NHS Trust and others. And I think particularly in England, there's a huge amount of work that has to be done there to develop mechanisms which support better collaboration, better integrated working, and incentivise and support that rather than making it more difficult, as I think many of the incentive structures currently do. And then fourthly, we've already heard it in David Hughes' opening speech today, but despite real progress through the Love Our Colleges campaign in England of colleges raising concern about the significant underfunding of the sector, there is a huge amount of work to do there. And we had a fantastic seminar at the British Academy back in September where Alison Wolfe, talking about the Commission, was really clear. And she said, you can sort out all of these other ideas, but if you don't sort out the fundamental inequities and underfunding of the sector, you won't solve anything. So funding absolutely has to be something we think about, both the level of funding, but also thinking about simpler, longer-term funding that means that college leaders don't have to be looking around their shoulder every moment and in survival mode, but really thinking as systems leaders about the role that they can play in driving growth in their communities.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Why not click subscribe so you can be informed when the latest next individual podcasts or podcast mini-series from FE News are going to be released.